You know how I know it has been not just a long time, but officially too long a time since I did this? I don't know where my Steven Universe shirt is. I usually only wear it for Steven Universe reviews that I don't want it to wear out. No idea where it is. Know where the hat is, though, at least. And I mean, I just wear this sometimes anyway. Let that get cold. I probably shouldn't have. Hey guys, welcome back to Steven Revisi-Verse. The standard warning is forthcoming that I talk a little different now, and I look a little different when I talk now. Hopefully, we're going to be fixing that soon, but that's going to be done with more oral surgery. So I might be out for a while again, sometime in the next coming months, which sucks. And this video is already going up way later than I wanted it to. Way later than I wanted it to. So hopefully I'll be able to get out a good amount of content again before that happens. Maybe even create a buffer. That does probably mean I'm not going up above the one video a week that I had been doing. We're probably going to stay there so I have time to create that buffer. Hopefully. But yeah, that's the situation. Anyway, Steven Revisi-Verse. We are talking about theories again today. And I know it is slightly out of order because we're not on future yet in the episode stuff. And also I don't... Where are they? Where did I put them? Over here. Okay. Also, I don't remember if I have gone over either of these theories before. I might have. What is YouTube doing up there? Oh, hold on. YouTube kicked me for some reason. Am I in? Am I me now? Okay, yeah. Weird. Did it do it on these other ones too? I mean, I'm assuming it did, right? Because it's the whole goddamn site. I wasn't kicked out on what I was just watching before I started doing this. That was weird. Anyway, I don't remember exactly what I was saying before all that happened. But today, even though we're not on future yet, and this is primarily going to lead into me talking about future in an upcoming video, and I might talk about it today a little bit too, because I mean, you know how it works. We're going back, and we're looking at my What Happened to Earth theory, which was more a discussion than a theory, and my cultural impact of gems, again, more of a discussion than a theory, but theory was the buzzword at the time, so I used it more often, obviously. And I did do some, like, speculating in it, so you know. I don't remember if I've gone over either of these yet in Revisi-Verse. Sorry, I was looking at something. And even if I did, though, I would still want to talk about them today, because, again, I've had this specific topic on my mind, which is that aside from, what was it called, Bismuth Casual, and, like, Very Special Episode, or whatever it was called, one of which is liked by the fans, and one of which is loathed. I have no episodes of Future that I would go back and, like, fondly rewatch. Like, there are episodes of the main series that I don't rewatch a lot either. Because, like, I mean, I own the DVD, but it's not like I just put the DVD in and let it run, right? I usually just pull up an episode from where I still have all of them downloaded for when I was doing content more often, and I'll just rewatch like Jailbreak or Change Your Mind or something with big cool like lore stuff and character stuff. But to have the entire concluding season of the show consist of episodes that, while I don't mind a lot of them, only like a couple of them I would rewatch before I'd rewatch something else that I like. That just doesn't sit well with me, you know? And I think a big reason why I have a problem with Future is because they tried to go back, now that Steven is older and has a different perspective, they tried to go back and deconstruct a lot of stuff that we knew to be true about the show. And I don't think they did a good job of it. Like, deconstructing Steven's entire helpful nature was like the main point of that goddamn show, and I don't think they did a particularly good job of it at the end of the day. I think it works well enough. You can get enjoyment out of it. It has meaning. It I'm sure means something to a lot of people. I just think they could have done a much better job of it, and I decided that a thing that Steven should have started to consider more as he got older and his perspective broadened was not just the impact of gems on the rest of the universe, but their impact on Earth as well. And a great way of going back and deconstructing the show as we understood it would have been taking stuff that should have been there relating to how Earth was impacted by and views the gems and bringing that up in future. And so I want to go back and I want to mine these videos for any ideas, and I'll look elsewhere too, but I want to start here because it makes a video. I want to go back and I want to mine these videos for any ideas of ways that the impact of gems on Earth could have become relevant, so that I could tie those into areas where Future tried to deconstruct the show. Because it's like my main complaint with Future, if you guys don't remember, is that it didn't tie into gem lore hardly at all. I might go back and rewatch the episode with Lapis too. What was her name? The nice one? The nice Lapis Lazuli that was in that one? I really love her. We didn't get enough of her. Still too cold. Point is, there was so much here. Humans should have been all over the frickin' gems. And they weren't. And it drives me a little crazy the longer I think about it. It was just brought up again recently on like my Tumblr or something too. Like, people are clearly still thinking about this. So I want to talk about it again. And we're going to start with what happened to the Earth. It's about 12 minutes long. And then we're going to go into the cultural impact of gems, which is also about 12 minutes long. And I'm just mostly going to just let these run, I think, because I don't really remember. Like, I have a general idea of what I put in them, because it's obviously stuff that I've thought about before. But I don't really remember the specifics. So here we go.
Steven Universe and all associated images are property of Cartoon
much
Network,
too loud. There we go.
Sugar, and any and all other respective owners. Been used for the purpose
back when I was still doing this.
Under fair use. Please support the official release.
8 years ago.
It was revealed a long time ago by the crew working on Steven Universe that Steven's Earth is intended to be an alternate version of ours. Now, typically in science fiction series such as Steven Universe, such a detail is used to justify why the world in which the story is set is virtually identical to ours, but with only small differences.
Yeah. Like, that's, I think, the main thing that still gets me thinking about this all this time later is, usually a multiverse story at least throws something in the background to tell you why the world that it's set in is different from ours. Then you have ones like a lot of anime, like the Dragon Ball Earth is still Earth, but it's a completely different Earth. It doesn't have a divergence point. What the One Piece Earth might, though. We just found that out recently, and I think that's really sick. That's beside the point. Steven Universe just doesn't do that. Like, it implies a few things, but none of them are really concrete enough to draw a conclusion.
And at first that seemed to be the case with Steven's world as well. Viewers of the show noticed that characters in the series didn't seem to celebrate all the same holidays that we do, that their money was a little bit different than ours, things like that. Makes for an interesting juxtaposition that can make for some of the most intriguing and sometimes disturbing episodes of science fiction shows.
I used to be way more clever than I am, putting Peridot being weirdly touchy with Pearl and disturbing her, quote unquote. When I talk about disturbing elements, was cute. I like the face cam, and I'm glad I'm back to doing it again, despite still being a little self-conscious about it. But I miss back when I used to use the characters talking to represent me. That was good times.
Choosing to set Steven Universe entirely in an alternate version of our Earth was a very bold choice by the writer.
It's a very anime
and
choice.
A smart one, too. That said, one of the most interesting things that the crew working on Steven Universe has done is slowly and carefully introducing details about Steven's world into the background of the series. With no context for how any of those details are different than the details in our world, characters in Steven's world simply don't talk about them.
I think the coolest thing about Steven's Earth, I'm exaggerating, but only slightly, is that they still use $2 bills.
Most observant of viewers.
I'm gonna put this on 1.25 times speed because I talk slow.
To spot the details for themselves and compile them into a working understanding of how Steven's world differs from our own. Now, in a previous video, I explained the multiverse theory in very simplified detail, and I explained it in the context of people, how the choices that people make in situations with multiple outcomes create alternate universes. What I didn't have time to talk about in that video is the fact that that theory also covers environments. Random quantum fluctuations can cause different branching universes to form in literally any situation where there is more than one outcome, even when choice isn't involved. Yet, in fiction, when working with alternate universes, writers typically ignore this particular detail in favor of focusing only on character choices. It just makes for a more interesting story. Now, you might think that the writers working on Steven Universe think much the same way. Today, I plan to prove otherwise, and I plan to do so by looking at a map of Steven's Earth. We're going to look at a map of the version of Earth where Steven Universe is set and use that to prove that the intended point of divergence between Steven's Earth and ours had nothing to do with anyone's choice.
Right, that's what this one was about. I like this one.
Gems arriving some 6,000 years ago was the divergence point. Yes, I am absolutely sure that the gems arriving on Earth caused things to develop differently than they would have here. But there are some changes between Steven's Earth and ours that simply cannot be due to their arrival. Surprisingly enough, it's actually the largest geographical difference that we have been introduced to so far that could be a result of the gem.
Yeah, you see it? Something's missing. It's Florida. Florida is an archipelago. No, it's that Russia. Most of Russia's gone. And also, Australia's like 2 big continents instead of 1. Also, I don't think... Is this a thing? I'm an American, so my knowledge of the world map is really bad. But I don't think that's a thing either. I need to go over this again, because this is such a fascinating... This map is so... god dang weird. It's so weird, and I love it so much.
We look at this map of Steven's Earth, as it is displayed by the moon-based computer in It Could Have Been Great. We can see a whole bunch of these red dots, which roughly correspond to some of the theoretical locations of gem installations as we've seen them throughout the series. For example, it was theorized for a long time that the galaxy warp was out to sea, and we see 3 red dots here in the Atlantic Ocean. Later, in Same Old World, we see Steven and Lapis Lazuli fly a relatively short distance out over the Atlantic Ocean and come across the galaxy warp.
Which is the only reason why I don't think it's the one in the middle of Russia. Because, who was it? Somebody suggested to me recently, like somebody in my real life, that, they could have, like, dropped the galaxy warp from orbit and caused, like, a really huge crater or something. And that could have been Russia, but Lapis, like, she doesn't fly him at, like, warp speed, because he would have come apart. And she doesn't fly very far, and they get to the galaxy warp. So it has to be one of the ones in the Atlantic Ocean.
The galaxy warp at this point here. That means that some of the other theorized locations, which I'm not going to get into here today, could also correspond with gem sites that we've seen in the show. However, one site that doesn't seem to correspond with anything that we've seen yet is this one here, where Russia should be. There is a huge hole smack dab in the middle of Russia, and a gem site is at the very center. Now, there have been theories as to what this could be. Some have theorized that the diamonds dropped some kind of bomb in the hopes of killing Rose and her rebels, but that's just not possible. The series is only set 5,500 years after the war. If a bomb powerful enough to destroy that much of a landmass had been dropped on the planet, ever, the fallout would have made the Earth unlivable for much longer than the time between that event and the current events of the series.
And that's something they could be ignoring for, like narrative purposes, like, oh, gem technology would have just prevented that from happening, because they wouldn't have wanted to choke the life off of a planet that they plan to use. But I would argue that they wouldn't have any need for that kind of consideration, because there hadn't been a war with another species before, or let alone a war with their own species. Like, there hadn't been such a large-scale conflict that they needed to end decisively for them to even develop that kind of technology. And even then, we know that the Diamonds had their big combined flashy light song attack thing that caused corruption that was intended to just wipe every gem on the planet, just kill everybody. So, if they could already do that, why would they fall back on a bomb, right? So, like the idea that they would have developed some bomb that wouldn't cause a huge amount of fallout, and I don't mean like it's a nuclear bomb and it would have irradiated the planet. I mean, destroying that landmass would have scattered the shit from the landmass into the atmosphere and choked the planet, right? Like, there never would have been a need for them to develop a technology to do that safely. So they shouldn't have the technology to do that safely. If they did it, they should have done it like rough and dirty as like a last resort, and it should have caused a huge fallout.
And you may argue that the writers wouldn't care about that, but I would argue in turn that the writers on Steven Universe have been shown time and again to care about science.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that as much as I used to. No offense to the crew, but like, they were playing more fast and loose than I used to like to think that they were.
To care about following established scientific principles in their series as often as possible. And
that is true. As often as possible, they do follow the principles that are introduced and narrativized. Is that a word? You know what I mean? In the show, it's just like the broader science of the actual world is a little up in the air.
Considering that a big theme of the show is the emotional fallout of events, I simply can't wrap my head around the concept that they would ignore the actual fallout.
I can now, though, because they do, constantly. And that's what we're talking about today. The actual fallout of the gems coming to Earth in the first place is completely overlooked by everything modern in the narrative. Like, we see the impact it has on the world kind of offhandedly in the context of these ancient locations. But we have no idea what the world at large thinks of gems present day. So I'm just wrong about that.
So the bomb theory is out. In that case, what else?
I do agree with that still, though.
Well, it could have been great if we continue on with the episode. We see a projection of what the gems plan to do to the Earth to turn it into a gem colony. And we can see very clearly that one of the things that they intended to do was to sink parts of the planet, to actually contract them inward until they opened up gaping holes in the surface.
And that's the key word there, is sink. I remember this one now. This one's actually, I really like this one.
Now, I'm not sure how they intended to do this, if they planned to remove materials from beneath the surface, materials that they could use maybe to make new gems or to build ships and technology.
Obviously.
But I do think that that's what happened here at Russia. I think that this site in Russia was the first site where this process was begun, and Rose and her rebels just weren't capable of acting quickly enough to stop it. However, I did mention that there are differences between Steven's Earth and ours that can't be explained that way. Looking at this map, it's obvious that there are drastic differences between a map of Steven's Earth and a map of ours. Just going off of examples that I can pick out with the naked eye with my very, very limited understanding of geography.
Which is still very, very limited. I should take a course or something.
I can see that the Great Lakes in North America seem to be a completely different shape. The Florida Peninsula is an island. There seem to be these white boundaries between North America and Central America.
Yeah, because isn't Central America a bunch of like loosely connected islands too, or something?
Since this map doesn't show any territorial boundaries, only natural ones, that means that Central America is an island or a series of islands as well. South America has
like Aqua Mexico or something, right?
much more landmass than it should. Africa has far less. There is a series of islands connecting the two landmasses. Much like a section of the United States is separate from the rest of the landmass in the form of Florida, a section of India is separate from the rest.
I didn't even catch that the
and
second
Australia
time. I did that,
is two landmasses instead of one. Now, these seem pretty obvious when you're looking at them, but not a single one of them is nearly as overt as the damage to Russia. That section of Russia is either completely gone, or, as I've theorized, sunk beneath the ocean. Either way, water has taken its place on this map, so for all intents and purposes, it just isn't there. But these other differences, all of the land is still there. It's just in different places.
And I do have a theory about this. Do I want to talk about it here or mark it for later? I'm going to mark it for later. But I do have a theory about that could explain how the gems... Use a different notebook than that. I'm using that for D&D notes. Various broken land masses on SU Earth caused by spoiler. Now that theory will not explain where these islands came from or why the difference in landmass here. That stuff would still have to come as a result of what I'm about to talk about. But I do think that the broken up sections of these landmasses can be explained by something gem-related.
Which tells us that these changes happen as a result of natural continental drift. For those who don't understand what I'm talking about 300 million years ago, a giant supercontinent made up of practically every single landmass on the planet came together as the previously existent continental masses naturally drifted together over time.
Things were so much better when Pangea was around. Way less politics. I miss those days.
About 175 million years ago, that supercontinent broke apart, and those pieces drifted apart from each other, forming the continents as we know them today. The shapes of the continents as we understand them were determined by which pieces of Pangea broke off and in what shape.
Which is so cool, man. Our world is so freaking awesome.
But if they had broken apart in different shapes than the ones that we know, the continents would be in different shapes than we know them today. That means that the divergence point between our Earth and Stevens happened at least 175 million years ago, millions of years before the gems even arrived.
And I know some people hate this theory, like, I don't know if you guys are still around. If you are, hi, good to see you. But some of you guys hate this theory because that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to the story, it's just a cool trivia thing. And, like, obviously, the meaningful divergence point comes later when the gems show up. Like, every weird historical difference can be explained, maybe with a little bit of reaching, but can be explained by the presence of gems on Earth. And so this doesn't matter. But isn't it neat? Isn't this neat? This was done intentionally. And it was done for no other reason than to be a cool background detail. The crew, while I don't agree with where they put their priorities all the time, they had such cool ideas making this show. And if it hadn't been screwed over by the network, maybe we would have gotten to see more of them come to fruition. And it makes me long for this show to continue or to have continued. Even more than I already, like, just automatically do on a daily basis.
But that isn't even far enough back. This next detail was actually pointed out to me on Tumblr. There will be a link in the description.
I love you guys on Tumblr.
That I am basing these insights on.
Straight up.
But looking at visual evidence in It Could Have Been Great, as well as looking at the sunrise, sunset patterns throughout the series, assuming that they aren't simply animation errors, it seems like the crew has always intended Stevens' Earth to rotate north-south rather than east-west. So assuming that this isn't just a very long string of very unfortunate animation errors, that means that it's very, very likely that Stevens' Earth formed differently to ours.
Which is also so cool. Again, this is intentional, right? It has to be. Because they drew it that way. And it's... I don't know. I just think it's a neat detail. It's one of those things that when you spot it, it just kind of rattles you. More shows need to do that stuff.
Which would make the divergence point between Stevens' Earth and our Earth, at the very least,
the
very formation
way
of the
earlier.
planet. I don't know if you guys have been keeping count, but that's way before the gems got here. And as I mentioned before, this divergence happened purely by random chance, by random quantum fluctuations. It's actually something I wish sci-fi series would explore more often, and I'm super excited that Steven Universe has chosen to do so. All of that said,
it didn't really explore it. It just brought it up so that people might notice it and then, like, go Google a neat thing. Which is, again, in and of itself, really cool. I miss this old logo, too. I like this. Need to go back to using that for a while. Get a little retro. That's a cool thing in and of itself, but they don't actually literally explore it in the show. And I wish they had found a way to do so. I think that would have been really neat.
It's very clear to me, and hopefully to you now as well, that the gems themselves had far less to do with the ways that Steven's Earth is different from our Earth than you originally thought. Which begs the question, what impact did the gems have on Steven's Earth? How did they make things like its culture, for example, differ from...
Yeah, and I'm just going to stop there. That's what we're going to look at next, so let's just move over to there. I really like this color scheme, by the way. But yeah, I might... Let me do this again. I might not show as much of this one because I might want to call back to it. How long have I've been recording for 40 minutes already. I'm going to cut a lot of that out, but that's a long time. I'm probably going to reference this one more in that upcoming video than I did the last one. Actually, I'm 100% sure I'm going to reference this one more than the last one, now that I remember what the last one was about, actually. But, so I might not show as much of this one. I might save it for that. But I do remember liking this video a lot, too. Let's go.
Steven Universe and all associated...
God! Too loud! God damn.
Property of Cartoon Network, Rebekah Sugar, and any and all other respective owners.
Which means that this week I can actually talk about something a little closer to what I initially intended this theory to be.
Cookie cat.
That being what exactly the impact of the
I want to make
gems
some
was.
cookie cats. I did that
Earth
once. It was a lot of fun.
And it is a huge cultural implication to the apparent damage to Russia. That being that Russia, as we understand it as a culture today, never would have formed in Steven's universe. The root languages, for example, would still exist. Some of the population that would eventually become the Russian population would exist. But with so much of the landmass gone, the development of any modern country that arose in the area would be significantly altered.
Like, I want to talk about this for a second because I wish I had a better understanding of world history and probability, probably also like statistics. Because if I did, I could tell you, and there's probably somebody out there who's done this, and I need to look for it and find it. Maybe even do like a react to it or something, if it exists. I could tell you how likely it is in Steven's world that the same Russian world leaders would have risen to power in some way, and how significant roughly their impact on the world could have still been with them having so many fewer resources at their disposal than they would have in our world, and how that might have impacted the development of like the United States or whatever. I can't do that though. It sucks. I really wish I could. I don't have the time to thoroughly enough research world history. I do know there are some people online I could think of off the top of my head who do like alternate world history stuff. I wonder if any of them take requests. I could say, hey, here's the pertinent details from this show. Could you maybe do an alternate universe theory video explaining how in the real world such a change might have affected things? Because even like South America being bigger and having more land, and Africa being smaller and having less land, would have caused a pretty substantial cultural shift from like the dawn of human civilization, right? And so like I can't imagine what something more modern like the loss of most of Russia would cause, because that wouldn't have been like foundational. That wouldn't have been a change to the roots of the culture. It would have been a change to something that was already in existence and coming into its modern existence. Because like on like a cosmological scale, 5,000 to 6,000 years, that's nothing. But I really wish I had more of an understanding, aside from just like the big events, of what cultural impact Russia had, cultural, political impact Russia had on the rest of the world, so that I could understand how things would have changed in even minute ways.
And while significant changes to the Russian culture in Steven's universe would definitely have caused global repercussions, it's really not possible to track something like that. In fact, it's really not possible to track a lot of the cultural differences that I'm going to suggest here today.
And I think the reason for that is they just didn't want to deal with it. Like, I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but That's really got to be it, right? Like, they said, we're going to put this big thing in there that's really weird, and people are going to notice it and talk about it, but we're going to kind of say that, well, cultures mostly just kind of fell into developing the same way they would have otherwise, so we can get to the point that we want to be at to tell our story, which is fine. I don't love it, but also, if I was telling a similar story, I would probably use it as a shortcut to get where I wanted to go, to actually tell that story also, so I can't criticize.
Technically speaking, this theory video is really more a collection of ideas which may eventually become theories, as this idea is explored more in the future of the show.
That's a bummer, because it just straight up wasn't.
They altered entire areas of the map, and this was effectively a global operation. The gems were practically everywhere.
And that's one thing that I think everybody can agree on. The reason why holidays are different in Steven Universe is because most religions just don't exist. Because here you have a population that is just starting to ask cosmic level questions often enough, in enough seriousness to be developing mythologies to explain them, and then actual literal ancient aliens come down from the sky. Like, I think if nothing else, if there is no other obvious modern impact of the gems having come to Earth that is actually present and explored, at least in the background of the show, that's the one that is.
Very unlikely that ancient mythologies like Greek mythology as we understand it, for example, or Egyptian mythology as we understand it, survived to modern times in Steven's world, in the
which is a shame, because I love ancient mythology.
The form that we know them today. I mean, just imagine, your culture is still evolving, and it's a very young culture, still developing its beliefs. And suddenly, creatures descend from the sky. Real, living gods, as you've begun to understand them.
Literally what I just said.
Guaranteed that the fledgling belief system of society is going to be altered.
Great mind thinks alike, I guess.
And this may be one of the main reasons for the differences in naming conventions in Steven's world, in regards to locations.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of American cities are named for characters in Greek and Roman mythology. In fact, there is an Athens in Ohio, named for the Greek city Athens, which was named for the Greek goddess of wisdom, Athena. And there is a Minerva, Kentucky, not too far away.
Man, can we go back to that for a second and just talk about how shitty my graphic design was for a while? Look at that, there's a gap between those. They're the same goddamn color. The boxes are also different sizes. And I guarantee I just cropped them down in Camtasia. It should have been so easy to line those up better. I'm so terrible.
However, we don't really know a lot of city names, so that's more of a speculation than anything else. We just know that the naming convention in the United States in general is different, because we know quite a few state names. For example, in this reality, Pennsylvania is not called Pennsylvania, it's called Keystone, which suggests that in Steven's reality, historically speaking, William Penn is less important to the history of that area than he is in ours, and instead the state was named according to its nickname. We also know that Steven's home state is not called Delaware, but is instead called Delmarva. While Delaware is named for the Delaware people, a native tribe. Quite frankly, I can't find any historical context for why the state would be called Delmarva in this reality.
I actually do know that now. It's named after, what was it? I need to look it up again, actually. It's an area of Delmarva, Maryland and Virginia, named for Delmar, a border town named after both Delaware and Maryland. So they just named the entire region off of that principle, which does suggest that maybe it's like a new state that seceded from those other states, and that like the other states existed in Steven's reality at one point, or that when they were naming them, they just kind of combined the names originally. We do know that British colonialism happened. I don't think, what I'm getting at is, I don't think there were Native Americans in Steven's reality. Which, don't we think the native population of the Americas came over from a land bridge in Russia, right? That was way before Russia would have been wiped, though, right? Maybe there was some sort of destruction that happened in Russia before the gems came, and really changed the course. I'm sorry, I'm theorizing in real time right now. And really changed the course of human development, like way back when that migration would have happened. And the gem facility in the middle of that crater was put there to research it, to understand what happened, maybe as a means of identifying whether or not it made Earth unviable for them or whatever. Do we ever see any Native American stuff? Steven Universe. This is how I research things, by the way. Rose's humans from her zoo were kind of native-y in their depiction. Sorry, that's a probably not a great word to use, native-y, but you know what I mean. Indigenous-y, which, there are theories all over the place. I need to join r/Steven Universe. I left or got kicked from them or something a while back. I need to rejoin. But yeah, it is an existing theory that... Oh, I actually have a new theory, I think. Yeah, we've seen totem poles. That's true. We're northwestern. Yeah. Yeah, it is an existing theory that Native American peoples, and possibly the Native Australians too, were wiped out by sort of the aftermath of the gem's original arrival here, because of the split down in the middle of Australia, which does make sense. Yeah, I do think that's the most likely option, though, that when... I'm not going to say anymore, because I'm going to make a video out of it. Let me write it down, too. It's not going to be a new theory, necessarily, because it looks like a lot of people have talked about it. But yeah, it just seems like there wasn't still much, if any, of a native influence on North America by the time colonists arrived, and we've seen that a little bit in the show. Rather than dealing with the regional native people, colonists dealt with the gems. Like that was literally an episode of the show.
Rather than Delaware, since Delmarva as a name refers to a peninsula in our universe, and is a compound abbreviation of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia.
Never mind. I legitimately thought that was just something I learned the other day. To be fair, it has been 8 years since I made this video. And you know, I'm glad I did forget that detail, because it brought me down this whole goddamn rabbit hole that now I'm maybe making content out of, so you know.
The fact that the world is, geographically speaking, very different. The origin of North American native tribes is that they came to the North American landmass over a land bridge between Alaska and I believe it was Siberia. It is perfectly reasonable to assume that that land bridge simply did not exist in Steven's reality for the natives to come across.
That is true. Even if the destruction of Russia didn't cause the lack of a land bridge, the fact that their geography is just so different could have. But I think maybe there were just fewer native people in the Americas in Steven's reality to start with. Maybe that's even why Rose seemingly started her colonization effort there. But I do think there were some, and oh man, this is forming in my head. It's gonna be good. I like it. Hopefully it doesn't hit a snag and fall through. Hopefully it doesn't turn out really bad either. Some of my recent videos have just been bad.
However, we know that can't be the case. We know that there had to be at least some of the same native tribes in Steven's reality, since we know that Kansas as a state still exists in Steven's reality and is still called Kansas. Kansas having been named for a native tribe. We've also seen a Native American totem pole in Greg's storage garage. There's also the idea of symbology in Steven's world. We have, however, as of the episode Steven Floats, seen a symbol for a jetliner company in Steven's reality, Dawar, which could very well be based in Steven's own state of Delmarva, perhaps suggesting that Dawar is a name of a city in Delmarva, perhaps a major city. Now, I did some research on the subject, and most airliner companies are actually named based on the local history of the area in which they arose, or on the history of the company itself. Yeah. And we see here, when looking at the full company insignia on the tail of the plane, that their corporate symbol is 4 diamonds. So if that's the case, isn't it possible that when Dawar Airlines was formed, they based their symbol on the 4 ancient gems which protect the state? That they based their symbol on rose quartz, garnet, amethyst, and pearl, using diamonds as generic symbols for gemstones?
And I think think that may be the biggest indicator we ever get in the show of a major, lasting cultural change brought about just by the presence of gems, and was the main reason for a long time that I assumed that the show would bring up the topic properly at some point.
If you don't believe that this is possible, let's take another look at money in this reality. Ignoring the fact that this society seems to use $2 bills in place of $1 bills as the smallest form of paper currency in the United States, let's take a look at the symbols on these bills. On an actual American $1 bill, we would see the American seal and the incomplete pyramid. The American seal representing America's independence through unity, and the pyramid representing strength and duration. But on the $2 bill in Steven's reality, instead of the American seal, we see a variation of Benjamin Franklin's Join or Die cartoon.
Yeah, which...
This isn't all that surprising, since the Join or Die cartoon had the same message of independence through unity. Exchanging the American seal for this cartoon actually makes a lot of sense. The more interesting symbolism here is that instead of the pyramid representing strength and duration, we have a diamond.
I don't know if I agree that that's the more interesting one anymore, though. That my new theory kind of elevates them to being equally interesting, but again, I'll talk about that later.
Once again, a diamond is also a valid symbol for strength and duration, but why use that instead of a pyramid? Well, simply put, in Steven's reality, the gems are so prominent in the public consciousness that
particularly, I think, in America,
a diamond is a more significant symbol to people in Steven's reality than a pyramid is. Once again, a diamond probably representing all of gemkind from the perspective of humanity.
Yeah. I think orienting it that way was just an Easter egg calling to Pink Diamond, not literally like an indicator that people of Steven's Earth were aware of her and who she was or anything.
Once again, it is not possible to accurately trace exactly how culture in Steven's world was influenced by the gems, only to suggest a few ideas, which is what I've done here for you today. So I ask you guys, is there anything that you've noticed that I seem to have missed? Perhaps those of you who hail from areas other than the United States, for example, have noticed some culturally relevant differences that affect your area more than mine. If so, please let me know in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.
I'm actually going to go down in the comments on this one and see if I catch any... Here's somebody mentioning the different color of Canada's flag, which, I mean, who freaking knows? Interesting. I didn't know that. Dalwar is the name of a diamond, and Kimberlite cluster. Okay, in India, what is Kimberlite? It's a gemstone, I imagine, right, or some kind of mineral. Why are you not dark mode? Go dark mode. Dark colored, heavy, often altered and brecciated. Which, thank you. Why am I reading the AI overview? Fuck you. Igneous rock contains diamonds in its rock. Interesting. Interesting. It can be found in the United States, which could create a connection. Interesting. That's so cool. That is a great comment. Thank you. Pink diamond gem shards, like those exist. That's true. The planets are still named after Roman mythological figures. Interesting. Hadn't even considered that because it's just so, like, assumed that the planets are going to be named the same thing. And yeah, that means Greek mythology must exist in some form. That's funny. I like that. I haven't, like, actually liked or loved any of these comments, so I'm, like, trying to fix that a little bit here. Dawar could just be Steven's version of India, and that was like Indian Airlines or something. That's a good point. I like that. The Long Earth by Terry Pratchett. Okay, cool. I will keep that in mind. I do like multiverse stuff. Not so much lately, since pop culture has kind of been running it into the ground, but you know. Yeah, that's true. Just the existence of corn does prove that native people existed. Yeah, I like that too. The all-seeing eye is like ubiquitous with like political conspiracy theories in our world. So that means that what they're probably suggesting there more than anything else is that the diamonds are well, the gems probably in general are a political conspiracy theory in Steven's world. People know about gems, kind of. They know of this group that impacted history, and people theorize about it but don't really know the details. I do think there had to have been some formal interaction between human and gem culture, like human and crystal gem culture, for lack of a better term. And somewhere at some point, though. Soviet Russia, we drown. It's funny. Yeah, definitely some interesting ideas down here. Makes me wonder. Connie's supposed to be Connie Steven Universe. Do they ever say that, though? Do they ever say the word Indian in the show? I don't think they do, right? So maybe her family isn't from India, they're from Dawar. And, like, an impact of gems on Earth would be that this place, with this big cluster of diamonds and diamond-inclusive minerals, expanded to be the name of the entire country. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to look into that some more. If you guys remember whether or not they ever actually say the word Indian in relation to, like, the country India in the show, let me know. Save me some time, but I'm gonna research it anyway. And that begs the question: if Dawar is the name of the country, depending on when it became the name of the country, or region, or whatever, however you want to say it, Native Americans probably never would have been called Indians in Steven's reality either. It's cool. It's cool stuff. Like, there's a lot there. I just wish they'd done more with it, clearly. But yeah, this is going to be a long one unless I manage to cut it down quite a lot. I did do a lot of rambling in here, so I could probably cut most of that out. Nobody wants to see me talk. In the meantime, though, I think I actually came upon some more interesting stuff in this one than I ever planned to. So what did you guys think of any of this? What do you have any thoughts on any of the stuff I brought up here? Any idea what the two ideas I have written on this notebook could be? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, and while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it, all that other stuff, subscribe if you haven't. I would say click the link to go buy my books, but if you do buy the digital ones, I'm gonna update the covers of the physical ones, like the cover of the digital ones too. But I don't want you guys having a physical book with a crappy cover. I kind of Phantom Menaced myself into thinking that I liked the covers of books 2 and 3, but I don't. I need to change them. Particularly book 2 looks really bad. The first one, though, I mean, is good, though. You can buy that one as a physical book if you want to. Anyway, this has been AJ22, and before I go off on another huge tangent, I'll talk to you guys later.